Welcome to Life Stories, where we share heartfelt journeys of transformation, resilience, and love. Today, we dive into the story of Jack Anderson, a billionaire CEO whose meticulously controlled life takes an unexpected turn when he is named the legal guardian of two children after a tragic loss. What starts as an obligation becomes a profound journey of self-discovery, as Jack learns the true meaning of family and purpose. Stay with us as we explore how love and trust can heal even the deepest wounds. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's inspiring tale. Jack Anderson thrived on control. Sitting at the head of the long glass-topped conference table in his Manhattan office, he surveyed the room with the precision of a general assessing his troops. Around him, his executive team hung on his every word as he outlined the next quarter's strategy for Anderson Enterprises. His voice, calm and calculated, filled the sleek, sunlit boardroom. This was his world, a world of decisions, dominance, and undeniable success. It was the life he had built from nothing, a fortress of wealth and influence. He paused to take a sip of water, giving his team a moment to digest his latest directive. Jack knew the power of silence. It gave his words weight, made people lean in. But just as he was about to continue, the soft click of heels on marble caught his attention. Monica, his assistant, approached with her usual blend of efficiency and hesitation. She prided herself on knowing Jack's rhythms better than anyone, and her interruptions were rare only when absolutely necessary. "Jack," she said quietly, leaning toward him, "there's a call you need to take. A notary. He says it's urgent." Jack's brow furrowed. "It can wait," he replied, irritation flashing in his grey-blue eyes. Monica hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. "It's personal," she added, the word landing like an anomaly in Jack's meticulously ordered life. Work had consumed so much of his time that personal was a concept he barely recognized. Still, there was something in Monica's tone that made him pause. With a sigh, he stood, gesturing for the meeting to continue without him. As Monica handed him the phone in the corridor, Jack's irritation was evident in the clipped way he answered. "Anderson." The voice on the other end was calm yet carried an undercurrent of urgency. "Mr. Anderson. This is Henry Allen from Grayson and Associates. I'm reaching out regarding a legal guardianship matter. You've been named as the guardian of Emma and Noah Walker, the children of Miss Sarah Walker." Jack's stride faltered. He loosened his tie instinctively, a tell he hadn't indulged in years. "There must be a mistake," he said, his tone sharp. "I don't have any involvement in guardianship cases." "No mistake, sir," the notary replied. "You were explicitly named in Miss Walker's will as the legal guardian for her 8-year-old twins." It was the mention of Sarah Walker's name that hit him like a punch to the chest. For a moment, the polished world he had constructed began to tilt. Memories he hadn't allowed himself to revisit in years stirred uneasily in the back of his mind. "I don't understand," Jack said, his voice quieter now. "I haven't seen Sarah in over a decade. Why would she name me?" "That's something only she could explain," Henry replied. "Unfortunately, Miss Walker passed away 2 weeks ago in a car accident. The twins are currently in temporary foster care. Arrangements need to be made for their permanent placement." Jack tightened his grip on the phone, his mind racing. He remembered Sarah as vividly as if she had been standing before him. Back in college, she had been a whirlwind of warmth and spontaneity, a stark contrast to his calculated ambition. They had been close, perhaps too close, but their lives had diverged when his relentless drive for success overshadowed everything else. He hadn't thought about her in years. Now, she was gone, leaving behind 2 children and an enormous responsibility he hadn't asked for. "This doesn't make sense," he said, more to himself than to Henry. "I'm not equipped for this. I don't know anything about raising children. I understand this is unexpected." Henry replied gently, "But the legal documents are clear." Miss Walker was adamant. "I suggest meeting the children. They're staying with a foster family in the city. Jack ended the call without another word. Standing motionless in the quiet corridor, his thoughts swirled in chaotic loops. Sarah's choice. The weight of guardianship. The lives of 2 children suddenly entwined with his. Monica, who had been waiting at a respectful distance, approached cautiously. "Everything all right?" she asked. Her tone neutral but her eyes filled with concern. Jack looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Cancel my afternoon meetings. I need some time." He retreated to his office, closing the door behind him. The space, a testament to his success with its floor-to-ceiling windows and carefully curated decor, now felt suffocating. He sat at his desk, staring blankly at the Manhattan skyline. Sarah Walker. Her name was a ghost, stirring up emotions he had long buried. Guilt, regret, and a nagging question he couldn't shake. Why him? Jack powered up his laptop and began searching. A few keystrokes brought up Sarah's obituary. Sarah Walker, 34, beloved elementary school teacher, devoted mother, and active community member. She had died tragically in a car accident. The twins, Emma and Noah, had been in the car but had miraculously survived with minor injuries. There was no mention of their father or any extended family. They were alone. Except, it seemed, for him. He stared at the screen, a heaviness settling over his chest. Sarah's smiling photo in the obituary reminded him of who she had been: kind, selfless, and always finding joy in life's smallest moments. How could someone like her have trusted someone like him with something so monumental? He didn't do family. His world was about control and precision, not the unpredictability of parenthood. The intercom buzzed, breaking his reverie. "Mr. Anderson." Monica's voice came through. "Your driver is ready whenever you are." Jack hesitated before responding. "Thank you, Monica." He stood, smoothing his tie and straightening his jacket. If he was going to face this, he would do it on his terms. As he rode in the back of his sleek black town car, the city's noise muted by the glass, Jack opened the file the notary had sent over. Inside were legal documents, an overview of Sarah's will, and a sparse dossier on the twins. 2 photos stared back at him. Emma, with her solemn eyes that seemed far older than her years, and Noah, a boy with a mischievous grin and messy brown hair. Their young faces bore the weight of a loss they shouldn't have had to endure. Jack closed the file and leaned back in his seat, exhaling deeply. His life thrived on predictability and order. Yet here he was, plunged into chaos by a single phone call and the unshakable trust of a woman he hadn't seen in years. He adjusted his cufflinks, his mind a whirlwind of questions he didn't yet have the answers to. One thing was clear: his life had just changed forever. The following day, Jack Anderson found himself standing outside a modest suburban home on the outskirts of the city. It was a far cry from the glass towers and luxury penthouses that defined his life. His driver had parked discreetly down the street, leaving Jack to face this moment on his own. He adjusted his tie, a nervous habit he couldn't quite shake, and approached the door. The foster care liaison, a middle-aged woman named Denise Harper, greeted him with a polite but cautious smile. "Mr. Anderson," she said, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming. The children are inside. They've been adjusting. But it's been difficult." Jack nodded, unsure how to respond. Words had always come easily to him in the boardroom. But here, standing on this porch about to meet 2 grieving children, he felt uncharacteristically unsteady. Denise led him through the small, cozy living room to where Emma and Noah were waiting. The twins sat side by side on an old couch, their contrasting personalities on full display. Emma sat upright, her legs tucked beneath her, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Her dark eyes met Jack's with a mix of suspicion and quiet strength. Noah, on the other hand, sprawled on the floor with a pile of action figures, barely sparing Jack a glance before returning to his toys. Jack hesitated, taking a moment to collect himself. Hi, he said, his voice stiff. I'm Jack. Emma's gaze didn't waver. Why are you here? She asked, her tone direct and unyielding. Jack cleared his throat. Your mother, she named me as your guardian. Noah looked up then, his brow furrowed in confusion. She didn't tell us about you, he said, his voice tinged with doubt. Jack took a step closer, feeling the weight of their skepticism. I knew your mom a long time ago, he explained, trying to find the right words. She trusted me to take care of you. Emma's grip on her stuffed rabbit tightened. If she trusted you so much, why weren't you around before? The question stung. More than Jack had anticipated. He searched for an answer. But the truth that he had let their mother drift out of his life in pursuit of success felt insufficient. Even to himself. I don't know, he admitted finally. But I'm here now. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner. Denise stepped in, sensing the tension. Why don't we take it one step at a time, she suggested gently. Mr. Anderson. I'll be in the kitchen if you need me. Jack nodded, grateful for the reprieve, and turned back to the twins. Noah had gone back to his toys, muttering under his breath, while Emma continued to study him with an intensity that made him feel like a bug under a magnifying glass. He didn't blame her. Their world had been turned upside down, and now he was here, a stranger trying to step into their lives. Do you have any questions? He asked, hoping to bridge the growing gap between them. Emma shrugged, her expression guarded. Why did she pick you? Jack hesitated. It was the question he had been asking himself since he received the call. I wish I knew, he said honestly. But your mom was an incredible person. She must have seen something in me that I don't even see in myself. Emma didn't respond, her gaze drifting to the window. Jack felt a pang of guilt, unsure if he was helping or making things worse. After a few more awkward moments, Denise returned to the room. Let's give them some time, she said, ushering Jack toward the door. You can come back tomorrow to finalize the arrangements. Jack left the house with a heavy heart. As the car pulled away, he glanced back at the small, worn home, the weight of Sarah's decision pressing down on him. For the first time in years, he felt truly out of his depth. That night, back in his sprawling penthouse, Jack couldn't escape the twins' faces. Emma's solemn eyes and Noah's quiet defiance lingered in his mind. He poured himself a glass of scotch and settled onto the couch, the city skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. His life, once a symphony of control and precision, now felt precariously close to unraveling. He powered up his laptop, searching Sarah's name once again. News articles about the car accident filled the screen. But he delved deeper, uncovering a small blog post written by one of her colleagues. It described Sarah as a beloved teacher who had dedicated her life to her students and her children. Despite the challenges of being a single mother, there was no mention of a father, no other family to step in. Jack's chest tightened as he read. Sarah had been carrying so much, and yet she had still found joy in the little things, joy he had been too focused on his career to notice back then. Her faith in him now felt both validating and crushing. Why had she thought he was the right person for this? What had she seen in him that he couldn't see in himself? As the night wore on, Jack found himself replaying fragments of the past. He remembered Sarah's infectious laugh, the way she lit up a room without trying. She had once believed in him, trusted him when no one else had. And now, even in death, she was asking him to step up in a way that terrified him. The next morning, Jack made a decision. He would meet the twins again, not as a CEO or a man with all the answers, but as someone willing to try. He owed that much to Sarah and to Emma and Noah. The following morning, Jack Anderson stood in his penthouse, waiting for the arrival of Emma and Noah Walker. He had made the arrangements himself, or rather, Monica had. His assistant, ever the efficient problem solver, had coordinated the logistics of bringing the children to his home. The space was immaculate, as always, its sleek lines and cold luxury a reflection of the life he had built. But as he looked around, Jack realized just how sterile it was, more like a museum than a home. The doorbell rang. Breaking his thoughts, Monica greeted the foster care liaison, Denise, who entered with the twins trailing behind her. Emma walked cautiously, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm, her eyes darting around the penthouse with suspicion. Noah, on the other hand, marched in with his action figures clutched tightly in his hands, his wide eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and wariness. "Welcome," Jack said, his voice unnaturally formal. He wasn't sure how else to address two children who had been thrust into his life so abruptly. Emma glanced at him but said nothing, while Noah tilted his head. "This place is big," he said, his voice carrying the awe of a child seeing something grand for the first time. "And weird." "It's not weird," Emma corrected sharply, her tone flat. "It's cold." Jack winced. The words stung more than he expected. He turned to Denise for guidance, but she simply gave him a sympathetic smile. "They're still adjusting," she said. "It'll take time." "Of course," Jack replied, nodding stiffly. "I've arranged for everything they might need. Clothes, toys, books, whatever they want." Denise smiled politely, but Emma's skeptical expression made it clear that material things wouldn't win her over. Noah, however, perked up at the mention of toys. "Do you have dinosaurs?" he asked. "Yes," Jack said. "A whole set of them." Noah grinned for a brief moment before catching his sister's disapproving look and turning serious again. Jack sighed inwardly. It was going to be harder than he thought. The first few days were a series of missteps. Jack had approached the situation like a business acquisition: identify needs, allocate resources, and execute a plan. But parenting, or whatever version of it he was attempting, didn't follow a corporate blueprint. The twins were grieving, confused, and wary of him. His attempts to bridge the gap felt clumsy at best. He had hired a nanny, Margaret, to handle their day-to-day care, a well-credentialed woman with years of experience. Margaret seemed like the perfect choice, but Emma and Noah wanted nothing to do with her. They ignored her structured schedules and refused her offers to play games or read stories. Instead, they retreated to the bedroom they now shared, shutting the door and leaving Jack feeling like an unwelcome guest in his own home. Jack tried to focus on work, retreating to his office to bury himself in conference calls and emails. But the tension in the penthouse was impossible to ignore. Every so often, he would hear raised voices or the sound of something breaking. One evening, he returned from a late meeting to find Margaret in tears, Emma glaring at her from the doorway, and Noah clutching an action figure like it was his lifeline. "What's going on here?" Jack demanded, his tone sharper than he intended. "They've been impossible today," Margaret said, her voice shaking. "I was trying to keep things organized. And they—" "You tried to take his stuff," Emma interrupted, her voice rising. "Leave us alone." "I wasn't taking it away," Margaret replied defensively. "I was just cleaning up." "Enough," Jack said, holding up a hand. "Margaret, you can go for the evening. I'll handle this." The nanny left, muttering about unruly children, and Jack turned to face the twins. "Go to your room," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "We'll talk about this later." Emma stared him down, her defiance sharp enough to cut glass. But she eventually grabbed Noah's hand and led him down the hall. The door slammed behind them, leaving Jack standing alone in the aftermath. He sank onto the couch, rubbing his temples. This wasn't working. He had thought he could delegate the emotional labor to someone else. But it was clear the twins didn't need a nanny or a penthouse full of toys. They needed something he wasn't sure he could give: connection, comfort, stability. For a man who thrived on solutions, the realization was deeply unsettling. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One evening, Jack found Emma sitting at the dining table, sketching in a notebook. He had returned home late, expecting the usual standoffish silence. But something about the sight of her pencil moving across the page made him pause. "You draw?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Emma didn't look up. "Mom taught me," she said simply. Jack nodded, pulling out a chair to sit across from her. "Can I see?" Emma hesitated before turning the notebook around. The sketch was incredible, an intricate drawing of the city skyline. Each detail rendered with precision and care. Jack was genuinely impressed. "This is amazing," he said. "You're really talented." Emma shrugged. But there was a flicker of pride in her expression. "It's just something I do." Jack smiled. "I used to draw, too, when I was a kid." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You?" "Yeah," Jack said. "I wanted to be an architect once. I loved sketching buildings. But I wasn't nearly as good as you." Emma's lips curved into a small, reluctant smile. It wasn't much, but it was something, a crack in the wall she had built around herself. Over the next few days, Jack made a concerted effort to connect with the twins. He took Noah to the Natural History Museum, where the boys' fascination with dinosaurs came alive. They spent hours exploring exhibits. Noah's excitement infectious. With Emma, Jack encouraged her drawing, buying her new sketchbooks and pencils. Slowly but surely, the frost between them began to thaw. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments, awkward silences, and moments when Jack felt completely out of his depth. But there were also small victories, a shared laugh, a hesitant smile, a moment of trust. For the first time, Jack began to see a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to be a family. Jack Anderson wasn't one to embrace vulnerability. In his world of billion-dollar deals and high-stakes negotiations, emotions were liabilities, distractions that derailed progress. But with Emma and Noah, Jack found himself in unfamiliar territory where emotional walls were not only unhelpful but outright harmful. And for the first time in years, he realized that the rules of his professional life didn't apply here. The turning point came on a Saturday afternoon. Jack had planned an outing to Central Park, hoping the open space and change of scenery might ease some of the tension. The twins had been wary of the idea at first, but Noah's curiosity eventually won out, dragging Emma along in his wake. At the park, Noah raced toward the playground with unrestrained enthusiasm, his small legs carrying him up the jungle gym and down the slides with boundless energy. Jack, in his tailored slacks and polished shoes, felt entirely out of place. But he followed Noah's movements with genuine amusement. Emma, however, hung back, sitting stiffly on a nearby bench with her arms crossed. She watched her brother with a guarded expression, the faintest flicker of a smile crossing her face before vanishing entirely. Jack approached her cautiously, sitting down beside her. "Not a fan of playgrounds?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Emma shrugged without looking at him. "I'm not a little kid." Jack nodded, taking her answer at face value. For a moment, they sat in silence, the distant sound of laughter and the rustling of leaves filling the space between them. Then Jack noticed a group of teenagers playing basketball on a nearby court. He glanced at Emma. "What about basketball?" he asked. "Do you play?" Emma's eyes flicked toward the court, her interest briefly betraying her stoic exterior. "Mom used to play with us sometimes," she said softly, her voice almost drowned out by the noise around them. Jack seized the opportunity. "I'm not much of a basketball player," he admitted. "But if you want, I could give it a try." Emma turned to him, her skeptical expression bordering on incredulous. "You play basketball? In a suit?" Jack chuckled, surprised by her reaction. "Why not? I've embarrassed myself before." "What's one more time?" Emma's lips twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "You'll definitely embarrass yourself," she said. "Probably," Jack replied, standing and loosening his tie. "But you'll have to help me." Emma hesitated but eventually followed him to the court, where Jack borrowed a basketball from the teenagers. To say he was terrible would be an understatement. His shots veered wildly off course, and his attempts at dribbling drew muffled laughter from the other players. But Emma, to Jack's surprise, began to offer tips, her voice growing steadier with each suggestion. "Don't hold the ball so tight," she instructed. "Relax your hands. And you're standing too far back." Jack followed her advice. And though his aim didn't improve much, Emma's smile became more frequent. By the end of the impromptu lesson, she had taken a few shots herself, her natural talent on full display. That evening, back at the penthouse, Noah couldn't stop talking about the day's adventures. From the playground to Jack's failed basketball attempts, Emma remained quieter, but there was a lightness to her demeanor that Jack hadn't seen before. She even stayed in the living room for a while, sketching as Noah recounted their day in vivid detail. Jack found himself watching them, a feeling he couldn't quite name settling in his chest. For the first time, the penthouse didn't feel so cold. The twins' laughter and presence filled the space in a way that no amount of designer furniture or curated artwork ever could. The next weekend, Jack planned another outing, this time to a lakeside cabin upstate. It was a property he rarely visited, usually reserved for company retreats or solitary weekends to recharge. But he wanted the twins to see it, to have a place where they could run free and create new memories. The drive up was long but pleasant. Noah peppered Jack with questions about the cabin, the lake, and whether they could bring a dinosaur back as a pet. Emma, meanwhile, gazed out the window, her sketchbook balanced on her lap. When they arrived, Noah bolted toward the dock, his laughter echoing across the still water. Emma followed at a more measured pace, her eyes taking in the cabin, the lake, and the surrounding woods with quiet curiosity. "This place is huge," Noah declared, his voice filled with awe. Jack smiled. "It's ours now. We can come here whenever we want." Emma turned to him, her expression softening. "Thanks," she said quietly. Over the next 2 days, Jack and the twins settled into an easy rhythm. He taught Noah how to fish, though the boy was more interested in naming the minnows than catching them. Emma spent hours sketching by the water, her pencil capturing the rippling waves and towering trees. Jack joined her one afternoon, bringing a sketchpad of his own. His attempts at drawing were laughable, but Emma didn't tease him. Instead, she gave him tips, her voice patient and encouraging. In the evenings, they roasted marshmallows around a fire pit. Noah's face was a sticky mess of chocolate and marshmallow, and Emma tried and failed to hide her laughter. Jack watched them, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the fire. This, he realized, was what Sarah had wanted for them. Not just stability, but moments like these, moments that made life feel full and meaningful. As the weekend came to an end, Jack found himself reluctant to leave. The cabin had become more than just a retreat, it was a place where they had started to feel like a family. And as they drove back to the city, the faintest glimmer of hope began to take root in Jack's heart. He wasn't sure how, but for the first time, he believed he might actually be able to do this. The warmth of the weekend at the cabin lingered for days after Jack, Emma, and Noah returned to the city. The penthouse felt less imposing, its once sterile spaces now alive with laughter, scattered toys, and the occasional mess from Noah's enthusiastic playtime. Jack was beginning to find his footing, cautiously optimistic that they were inching closer to becoming a family. But just as things were starting to fall into place, the peace was shattered by an unexpected development. It began with a knock on Jack's office door. Monica entered, her usual calm demeanor overshadowed by unease. She handed him a padded envelope and said softly, "This arrived from Grayson and Associates. It's about the twins." Jack frowned, setting aside his laptop. He opened the envelope and pulled out a set of legal documents. His heart sank as he read the contents, a formal custody claim filed by Robert Walker, a distant cousin of Sarah's, asserting that he was better suited to raise Emma and Noah. "Who is this guy?" Jack asked sharply, scanning the documents again. Monica hesitated. From what I've found. He's a small-time contractor in upstate New York. He's claiming a stronger legal claim as a biological relative. There's no record of him being involved in Sarah's life or the twins. Jack clenched his jaw, frustration simmering beneath the surface. He didn't want to believe that someone with no connection to the twins could disrupt everything they had begun to build. Get our legal team on this, he said firmly. We're not letting this happen. Over the following weeks, Jack's life became consumed by preparations for the custody hearing. His lawyers worked tirelessly, gathering evidence to defend his guardianship. They emphasized Sarah's explicit wishes in her will, Jack's growing bond with the twins, and Robert's lack of prior involvement in their lives. The legal battle added a new layer of tension to the penthouse. Jack tried to shield Emma and Noah from the details, but they were perceptive enough to sense that something was wrong. The once light-hearted breakfasts became quieter, and the twins' laughter seemed more subdued. One evening, as Jack was reviewing court documents in his office, Noah appeared in the doorway clutching his stuffed dinosaur. "Are you mad at us?" he asked, his voice small. Jack looked up, startled by the question. "What? No, of course not. Why would you think that?" Noah shifted uncomfortably. "You're always busy now. And you look mad all the time." Jack's heart sank. He set the papers aside and crouched down to Noah's level. "I'm not mad at you," he said gently. "There's just a lot going on right now. But it's not your fault. I promise." Noah nodded. But the worry in his eyes didn't fade entirely. Jack ruffled his hair and said, "How about we read a story before bed?" The boy's face lit up, and Jack felt a flicker of relief. He knew he needed to be present, even amidst the chaos. The day of the custody hearing arrived, and the tension was palpable. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as lawyers, reporters, and onlookers filled the space. Jack sat at the front with his legal team, his expression stoic but his mind racing. Across the room, Robert Walker sat with his own counsel, his demeanor smug and self-assured. The proceedings began with opening statements. Robert's lawyer painted him as a family-oriented man who could provide the twins with a connection to their roots. He argued that Jack, a billionaire CEO with no prior parenting experience, was ill-equipped to handle the responsibilities of raising two children. Jack's lawyer countered by presenting Sarah's will as the cornerstone of their case. They highlighted her explicit wishes and introduced character references from people who had seen Jack's efforts firsthand. They also emphasized Robert's lack of involvement in Sarah's or the twins' lives. The most challenging moment came when Robert himself took the stand. He spoke confidently about his family values and how he believed Emma and Noah needed stability that only a biological relative could provide. He framed Jack as an outsider, a man whose wealth didn't guarantee emotional connection. Jack clenched his fists beneath the table, his frustration barely contained. When it was his turn to testify, he took a deep breath and walked to the stand. "I won't stand here and claim I'm perfect," he began, his voice steady. "When Emma and Noah came into my life, I didn't know what to do. I've spent most of my life focused on work, building my business. But over the past few months, these two children have shown me something I didn't know I was missing." He paused, glancing at Emma and Noah, who sat with their court-appointed advocate. Emma's gaze was unwavering, while Noah held his stuffed dinosaur tightly. "They've become more than a responsibility to me," Jack continued. "They're my family. Sarah trusted me to take care of them, and I intend to honor that trust. Underscore 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 underscore. The climax of the hearing came when Emma and Noah were given the chance to speak. Jack had assured them they didn't have to, but Emma insisted. Standing before the court, Emma's voice was clear and unwavering. "We didn't know Jack at first," she said. Her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "And we didn't think he wanted us. But he tried. Even when we made it hard for him, he never gave up." She glanced at Jack, her eyes softening. Mom wouldn't have picked him if she didn't think he was the right person. And now, I think she was right. Noah followed, his voice quieter but no less heartfelt. "I miss my mom," he said simply, "but I feel safe with Jack. And I don't want to leave." When the judge delivered her decision, Jack's breath caught. She acknowledged the complexity of the case but emphasized the importance of honoring Sarah's wishes and the bond Jack had formed with the twins. "I hereby award full custody of Emma and Noah Walker to Mr. Jack Anderson," she concluded. Relief washed over Jack as he turned to the twins. Emma ran to him, her arms wrapping tightly around his waist, while Noah buried his face in Jack's chest. For the first time, Jack allowed himself to believe that they truly were a family. The fight was over, but their journey together was just beginning. The courtroom victory marked the end of the legal battle. But for Jack Anderson, it was only the beginning of his journey as a father. Returning to the penthouse with Emma and Noah that evening felt different. The weight of uncertainty that had loomed over them for weeks had lifted, replaced by a quiet sense of relief. But Jack also knew that their new life together wasn't something he could take for granted. It was something he would have to earn. Every single day. The morning after the hearing, Jack woke earlier than usual. The once silent penthouse was now alive with small sounds, the faint hum of cartoons on the TV, Noah's giggles, and Emma's occasional reminders for her brother to stop making a mess. Jack stood in the kitchen, his sleeves rolled up, flipping pancakes. He had decided to make breakfast for them himself, a small gesture, but one that felt significant. When Noah padded into the kitchen, his stuffed dinosaur still clutched under his arm, he stopped short and stared at the sight of Jack at the stove. "You're cooking?" he asked. Incredulous. Jack smiled. "I've been known to make a decent pancake." Emma entered next, her eyebrow arched skeptically. This should be interesting. By the time the pancakes were plated, the kitchen was filled with laughter. Noah insisted on drowning his in syrup, while Emma grudgingly admitted that they weren't as bad as she expected. Jack, sitting across from them, felt a warmth he couldn't quite describe. It was in these small, unpolished moments that the idea of family started to feel real. In the weeks that followed, Jack worked to create a life that prioritized Emma and Noah in ways he never thought possible. Mornings were spent at the breakfast table, talking about their plans for the day. Jack adjusted his work schedule to drop them off at school himself, surprising Monica and his entire office team with his newfound flexibility. Evenings became sacred time, reserved for board games, helping Emma with her sketches, or indulging Noah's endless curiosity about dinosaurs. One Friday evening, Jack returned home to find Emma sitting at the dining table, her sketchbook open in front of her. She was working on a detailed drawing of a mother and her two children, their hands entwined as they walked through a park. Jack paused, watching her pencil move across the page with precision. "That's beautiful," he said, stepping closer. "Who's it for?" Emma looked up, her expression softening. "It's for Mom," she said quietly. "I wanted to draw something she'd be proud of." Jack's chest tightened. He knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "She would be so proud of you, Emma. Of everything you do." Emma hesitated for a moment before nodding, her gaze returning to the drawing. Jack rested a hand on her shoulder, silently marveling at her resilience. Noah, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of energy and endless questions. One Saturday, Jack took him to the Natural History Museum for a private tour arranged by one of his business connections. Noah darted from exhibit to exhibit, naming each dinosaur with uncontainable enthusiasm. "Did you know the T-Rex had a bite force of 12.000 pounds? Noah asked, his voice brimming with excitement. Jack smiled, trying to keep up. "That's impressive. Maybe you'll be a paleontologist one day." Noah stopped mid-step, looking up at Jack with wide eyes. "What's that?" "It's someone who studies dinosaurs," Jack explained. "Like the people who dig up their fossils." Noah grinned, the idea clearly captivating him. "I'm going to be the best paleontologist ever." Jack chuckled, ruffling the boy's hair. "I don't doubt it for a second." The day at the museum was one of many moments that brought Jack closer to Noah. With each adventure, Jack found himself rediscovering the joy of curiosity through his son's eyes. Of course, not every moment was picture perfect. There were still arguments, tantrums, and moments when Jack questioned whether he was doing enough. Emma's teenage defiance occasionally resurfaced, and Noah's boundless energy sometimes clashed with Jack's need for order. But each challenge became an opportunity to learn not just about the twins, but about himself. One evening, after a particularly tense argument over bedtime, Jack sat in his office, replaying the events in his mind. He had raised his voice, something he rarely did, and the look of hurt in Noah's eyes had stayed with him long after the boy went to bed. The intercom buzzed, and Monica's voice came through. "Mr. Anderson, there's a package for you. It's from Grayson and Associates." Jack frowned but quickly retrieved the package. Inside was a handwritten letter from Sarah, a final message she had left for him. His heart pounded as he unfolded the paper, her familiar handwriting bringing a wave of emotion. "Dear Jack, if you're reading this, it means you've decided to fight for Emma and Noah. Thank you for that. I know it hasn't been easy, but I want you to know why I chose you. You've always had a heart that cares deeply, even if you don't let it show. I saw it back in college, and I still believe in it now. You don't have to be perfect, Jack. You just have to be present. That's what they need most, someone who will show up for them, no matter what. I know you'll rise to this challenge. You always do. And I know you'll make me proud. Take care of my babies. They're my world and they'll be yours too if you let them. With love, Sarah." Jack read the letter twice, then a third time. Her words resonated deeply, touching something he hadn't fully acknowledged. He wasn't just fulfilling a promise to Sarah, he was building something meaningful with Emma and Noah, a family. Over time, the penthouse transformed from a cold, impersonal space into a home. The walls were adorned with Emma's artwork, and the shelves overflowed with books and dinosaur models. Jack found himself smiling more, laughing more, and feeling a sense of fulfillment that no business deal had ever given him. One night, as Jack tucked Noah into bed, the boy looked up at him and whispered, "Good night, Dad." Jack froze, the simple word wrapping around his heart like a warm embrace. "Good night, buddy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. In the doorway, Emma watched, her sketchbook in hand. She met Jack's gaze and smiled. "Good night, Dad," she said softly. For the first time, Jack felt truly at peace. He wasn't perfect, and he still had a lot to learn. But he was exactly where he was meant to be. In the laughter, the chaos, and the quiet moments of connection. Jack Anderson had found what he never knew he was missing, a family. As Jack Anderson stood in the kitchen one quiet morning, watching Emma sketch at the table and Noah excitedly build a new dinosaur model, he realized how far they had all come. The once empty penthouse was now filled with life, laughter, and the warmth of family. Jack, who had spent years chasing success, discovered that the greatest achievement wasn't building an empire, it was building a home. Through love, resilience, and the memories of Sarah's unwavering trust, Jack transformed from a solitary billionaire into a father who showed up every day for his children. He learned to embrace the messiness of family life, finding joy in the small, unpolished moments that made them stronger together. As the sunlight poured through the windows, Jack smiled. Life was no longer about control or perfection, it was about connection. He didn't just honor Sarah's wish, he discovered the purpose she saw in him all along. Thank you for watching this heartwarming story of transformation and love. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories to explore more inspiring tales like this one. Click the notification bell so you never miss an update. And we'll see you in the next video.